So welcome JBS viewers to the ISGAP Hour Fighting Anti-Semitism. And today I have the great honor of being with Natan Sharansky as our guest. Natan is the chair of ISGAP, which is a great honor for the whole ISGAP family and team. And Natan is working with us on combating anti-Semitism, mapping, decoding, and fighting anti-Semitism. So Natan, welcome to the Oxford Summer Institute.
Thank you, Charles. Congratulations with the biggest number of participants in our seminar.
Congratulations to you and the whole team. It's really a team effort that made the Summer Institute possible. This is our 10th anniversary, actually, this year.
Well, yeah, of course, the team does a great job, but let's be fair. What's happening today with the anti-Semitism also helps.
Yeah, business is good, unfortunately.
My God.
Yeah, crazy. So how do you see the global situation? As you know, after October the 7th, there was this explosion of anti-Semitism throughout society. The universities have played a key role in the explosion of anti-Semitism. It seems to have gone from the classroom to the encampment, from the encampment into society. What's your view?
Well, look, of course, it's awful what happened in Israel, but the good side, if there is any good side, is that as a result there is new type of mobilization in the society, new type of awareness, and idealism of our new generation of fighters is on the level that we could never imagine. We were so concerned about this TikTok generation, and now we find that they can give us a great lesson in Zionism, in patriotism, in the noble look at the world and their own role in this world. At the same time, the tragedy happened also the world Jewry, and the discovery, for some very difficult discovery, is that progressivism and liberalism is not the same. And for years we were trying to explain that those who are this neo-Marxist progressive theories of oppressed and oppressor, they're not really for human rights. And they are for the so-called rights of oppressed against oppressor. And suddenly, the fact that those who are viewed as allies, when human rights organizations, women's organizations, when the most awful violation of human rights and women's rights is happening, they are silent, or say that is the part of liberation, that the part of the struggle against colonialism. And that was shocking, but that maybe permits to all of us to re-evaluate situation and to understand who are really our partners. Now we, ISGAP also, and in general, and I spent 20-something years trying to prove there is deep connection between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. We propose different types of methods to identify 3Ds, delegitimization, demonization, double standard, and so on. Today, it became on the surface in such an obvious and powerful way that hatred towards Israel, hatred of Jews. Israel is fighting, Jews are insecure on the campuses. And the good thing, really, is that Jews face the station when they'll stand up and be counted, or they will simply disappear as a Jewish community. And we have some good signs, like the letter of 500 students of Columbia University who proudly said that we are Jews, we are Zionists, Zionism is part of our identity. We demand from the government and from the leaders of universities to defend us in our right to live with our identity.
As you said, there was this sort of amazing reaction of Israelis going back to the army. There was, I think, more people showed up to rejoin their companies than was required. We're also beginning to see, I think, in North America, young Jewish people really coming back to their synagogues, to the organizations, that there's also a reawakening, it seems, in the North American and European Jewish community. Jews are proud to be identified as being Jewish, and there's a bit of a shift also after October the 7th. Going back to what you mentioned also, that when you and a small group of scholars and policymakers were arguing 20 years ago that there's a connection between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, many of us were dismissed as being right-wing or advocates for the Israeli government, but not really scholars or not being objective. Do you find now, with this explosion of anti-Semitism, that more people that maybe were skeptical of the connection between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are more open to it now that they see what's happening in universities, on the streets of London, Paris, New York? This sort of, in Washington the other day when Netanyahu was there, radical left-wing people and Islamists who are anti-American and anti-Semitic marching in the streets. Is there more awareness, you think? Are people open?
It has to be. Look, it's not, you rightly say that in the past it was said that there is no, in fact, anti-Semitism in the criticism of the State of Israel. Don't try to use the word anti-Semitism to justify behavior of the State of Israel. But even when we are proving that that is wrong, that there is, of course, legitimate criticism of Israel, but when we're speaking about demonization or double standards, I remember in the last years, the main argument was, don't try to compare the anti-Semitism on the right, which is like Ku Klux Klan type, and the anti-Semitism on the left, what you call the anti-Semitism, is simply few over-excited students responding to the tragedy of Palestine. So maybe they're exaggerating a little bit. But how can you compare this historical 1,000 years of anti-Semitism on the right with this, what's happening on the campuses? And we are saying that what's happening on the campuses is, in fact, bringing back of the neo-communist, neo-Marxist anti-Semitism, which goes under the pretext that Jews are exploitative, they are capitalists, the anti-Semitism that I lived with in the Soviet Union. What now happened in such a clear way that the fact that rapists were oppressed people, and the victims of the rape were settlers, were Zionists, including that means that there is no place for criticizing it. It's in such a powerful way, shows what really this anti-Semitism on the left means. It's not on the liberal left, it's on the radical, progressive left, which really sees Israel as absolutely illegitimate colony, and it sees Jewish people as rich, white males who are continuing to live with this colonial mentality, and we have to destroy them.
So given your experience in the former Soviet Union, what do you think, like what makes intelligent? These are, you're now, we can quote professors at Ivy League universities, at Oxford, at Cambridge, at the Sorbonne, who would argue that what happened on October the 7th was a form of resistance, and that the resistance is justifiable, and the murder and even the raping of Israeli citizens is justified as a form of resistance. And this is not just coming from Hamas that wants to destroy democracy and destroy Israel and all democratic countries and replace it with a caliphate. This is also coming from progressive, educated, well-educated Westerners. Given your experience with the ideological rot of the Soviet Union, what's happening where you have smart, I guess misguided, but highly educated people articulating this worldview? Women are defending the professors of gender studies defending rape. Gay activists at the best universities supporting Hamas that not only want to kill Jews and Israelis, they would kill gay people just as quick as Jews. What is going on?
If I go back to the experience of my experience of the Soviet Union and the experience of the previous generations of this communist and struggle in Russia and then in the Soviet Union, we can see how ideology of equality to everybody, this dream about Olam Metukan, when there is no oppression, how it can blind the people. Because we are Jews, or because we are good people, because we believe in human rights, we have to support it. That's what is called useful idiots. And I have to tell you, for those Jewish professors at the universities today, they have to learn a little bit the history of their own family. Their grandparents, or great-grandparents, as a rule, ran away from the pogroms from Russia, from the Russian Empire, which started in 1881 after a Russian Tsar was killed. And one group of these revolutionaries, they were just before Communist Party, they were for killing Tsar, and the other group was for going to the people and speak to the people and mobilize them for fighting for the better world. And here happened these awful pogroms. And what this moderate group of revolutionaries, who today, yesterday became communists, what they say, but these people are attacked and killed not because they are Jews, but because they are capitalists. So it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. And so these pogroms, which in the end finished with the moving of millions of Jews to America, were justified by these communists who were dreaming about the better world for everybody, because it's pogroms not against Jews, but against capitalists. And later, in the Soviet years, in my days, of course, any crime of communism, crime of killing of millions of people, could be justified by this building the great communist ideal. And suddenly you see intellectuals like Bernard Shaw, or Leon Feuchtwanger, or the correspondent of Times, New York Times, I forgot his name, who got Pulitzer Prize. They are ready to buy all this nonsense and ignore fully what's happening with the killing of millions of people for the sake of this great idea of brighter future. And now we have a new generation of useful idiots.
And another tragic layer of this issue, this what you describe, is the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which emerges at the same...
Yeah, at the same time, absolutely at the same time. So the Tsar people who were quietly supporting these pogroms, on the other hand, we are producing this pamphlet about these Elders of Zion. And so people who wanted to hate the right, they would see in these pogroms justify the anger of the people against capitalists. And people who hate Jews on the left, they can see, you see what it is. It's like world plot, conspiracy of Jews against our normal life. So everybody can find his way of being ardent anti-Semite under the pretext of a good future for everybody.
And now the Protocols is a key element of the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology, which is Hamas and even the Iranian revolutionary regime. So you have progressive people in the West. It's almost, the Protocols went to from Europe to the Middle East, and now it's coming back to the West, which is...
yeah, well, that's what makes this anti-Semitism campaign so powerful. There is so-called progressivists who are ready to support all types of extreme neo-Marxist killing of the people, and Islamist anti-Semites who simply want destruction of the state of Israel. And when they become together one force, and that's what happened after the 7th, on both sides, the most extreme forces on both sides found one another.
Why do you think anti-Semitism is exploding now? Why in 2024 is this explosion of anti-Semitism? What are the issues or the conditions that are giving rise to this moment in history?
Well, look, anti-Semitism was also exploding around some very hot issue. It was in the first centuries of Christianity. It was fight for the justification of Christianity as the only true religion. And Judaism was a big problem for them because they came from Judaism, and these don't go with them. Then, of course, race. It became a big issue for those who wanted to believe that their race is superior, and who is challenging them. So they're fighting against Jews as a race. And then, when there came Soviet period, well, of course, many Jews will also believe in Tikkun Olam and so on, but then the leaders of Soviet Union found out if there are those who are not really loyal to us, because they're at least partially not with us. They have their own world, their own religion, their own gods, and we cannot be their gods. And so Jews became really the most problematic nation, I would say, simply because they continued to insist on their right to be not only communists, but also Jews. And that was enough to make them like the target of the persecutions. And now we have with the State of Israel. State of Israel is really an absolute unique situation, whether we understand it or not. The world is polarized. Those on the left who don't want identity, who believe that identity is fascism, but they want freedom. And let's say Middle East, or the world of dictatorships, who don't believe in freedom, but who do believe in identity. And suddenly they say, no, for the sake of our identity, we'll be fighting this freedom. And Israel belongs to the free world, but we insist we are a Jewish state. And Israel is part of the Middle East, but we insist we are a democratic state. And that goes against these two trends at the same time. While these trends are colliding, insisting, left and right today in Europe, what they're insisting, we are right, as we are right. And Israel says, no, we are right. And we are uniting these both approaches. I think it's very irritating. And that's how our enemies on the right, those who really want to destroy Jews as a nation, Jew state, and our enemies on the left, who are very upset that against all the theories of post-colonialism and creating a world without identities, there is the state in the center of everything, and it says, no, we are the proud state of freedom and identity. But these forces who hate us are meeting. That's what's happening.
Okay, so on that note, we're living in turbulent times, but Natan, with you as the chair of ISGAP, it's meaningful to our team, and really welcome to Oxford. You've been here many years, and it's a privilege that you're here with us. And we look forward to the program with you.
We are in the middle of a very important struggle for Jews and for the future of the world. And I am glad that ISGAP, your brainchild, and our institute is doing such an important job.
And just as a footnote, you were one of the first people I came to with the idea of ISGAP. And I asked for a letter of support, and you gave it to me. This is over 20 years ago.
I believe it's from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's a great honor. Thank you. Thanks, Natan. Today, we're very honored to have with us here at Oxford at the ISGAP-Oxford Summer Institute on Contemporary Anti-Semitism Studies, Jonathan Spyer. Jonathan is the Director of Research at the Middle East Forum, and he's also a very well-known and respected journalist associated with the Jerusalem Post and writes widely in other publications as well. So Jonathan, thanks for being here. It's an honor.
Nice to see you.
You know, you're one of the leading experts on issues surrounding, I know, Iraq and Syria, but also Lebanon and Hezbollah.
Yeah.
The situation seems from far, at least by media reports, that it's getting a little bit hotter in the northern border of Israel. What's your take on what's happening? Is it about to escalate? Do people really, are people trying, I know the United States and European powers seem to be trying to rein in the possibility of an explosion of a full-scale war.
Yeah.
What are the Israelis and Hezbollah, what do you think their take is on the situation now?
Well, first of all, I think we should note that there has been something very much resembling a war going on in the north since October 8th. That's to say, since the day after October 7th, when Lebanese Hezbollah joined unilaterally joined in the fight against Israel. It's no small, the dimensions of what have been taking place in the north over the last 9 months now are not in any way small or modest. We're talking about an historically actually unprecedented situation in which over 60,000 Israelis have left their homes. The northern border area is essentially deserted. Around 90 to 100,000 Lebanese have also left their homes in southern Lebanon. The butcher's bill, if I can put it that way, is heavy also. Thankfully, from our point of view, mainly on the Hezbollah side. They've lost, I think the current number is 383 people, if I'm not mistaken, from their own ranks, 50 or 60 people from other terror organizations. On our side, the death toll is smaller amongst both soldiers and civilians. But there's been a very, very major contest or clash going on for 9 months. Now, as you know, what happened over the last days is that Hezbollah's killing of 12 Druze children from the town of Majd al-Shams in the Golan Heights has placed things to a new level of intensity. This was the single worst act of terror against Israelis or on Israel since October 7th, and it clearly requires a response. And the reason for your question, as I understand it, is the question, well, what is that response likely to be? As you correctly point out, it's clear that behind the scenes, the United States and a number of European countries, and indeed in public statements by their leaders also, are hoping for restraint. That's to say, they do not want the outbreak of an all-out war across the region. And the fact is, which we have to confront, is that major Israeli action against Lebanese Hezbollah could well trigger a region-wide, could open the door to a region-wide war of dimensions which are very, very hard to predict. It's important to understand this. From the Iranian point of view, Hamas is a useful pawn, a useful client. It can be on the board, they can use it. If it's knocked off the board, it's not the end of the game from an Iranian point of view. Hezbollah is something entirely different. It's flesh of the Iranian regime, and it is the jewel in the crown. If I can get into a whole bunch of cliches one after the other. It's the jewel in the crown of the Iranian effort in the Arabic-speaking world. 40 years of investment have produced that organization from an Iranian point of view, which means that if it were in serious danger of being severely degraded or even destroyed by Israel, it then becomes very possible or even probable that the Iranians themselves would enter the fray and would mobilize their proxies across the region in a hitherto unprecedented fashion. Which is why, in my view, I should be hesitant to get into the field of prediction, as should we all. Nevertheless, I do suspect that the Israeli response to the killings in Majd al-Shams, when it comes, which it will, is likely, I think, to be within the dimensions that will not produce a general conflagration between Israel and Hezbollah. Just to conclude this answer, what does that mean? It means that for as long as the response takes place somewhere in the southern Lebanon area and is directed against Hezbollah personnel itself, we're in the, I guess, happy situation, we should grasp at straws, that Hezbollah apparently appears to not mind that so much. We've killed lots and lots of Hezbollah people without provoking all-out war. So we can probably kill quite a few now in appropriate response to the murder of 12 children in Majd al-Shams without provoking all-out war. If Israel chooses to have a large-scale ground incursion into southern Lebanon, or if Israel chooses to hit at targets in Beirut and the Beirut area, then we're into a whole different set of considerations. I suspect that Israel probably will not do that, but of course I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't know for sure.
So this is maybe a question from far away from the local context, and the implications are very serious. This is a very serious situation. But if Iran is orchestrating funding, orchestrating training, arming, all of these proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah and others in the regions, the Houthis, etc., and they are the source of terror around the world. They're the source of anti-Semitism. They are, by all reports, on the verge of being nuclear capable. They're trying to build a nuclear weapon, and they seem to be speeding towards that objective with success, it seems. This is the reports I'm reading. Is now the time to finally deal with the head of the snake, or are the implications so severe for the region that this is a I don't know, a reckless suggestion or a reckless question?
My personal view is that this, the very deep dysfunctionality of the Middle East on so many levels, also in terms of the proliferation of political Islam, an idea which poisons the societies in which it takes hold, also in terms of the proliferation of political military organizations, militias, that poison the political life and all the social, societal situation of the countries in which they take hold. Not all of it, but much of this traces back to the efforts of Islamic Republic of Iran, not in its entirety, but to a considerable extent, which means it is my contention that this can only end with the downfall of the regime in Tehran. My own view is that the regime in Tehran is vulnerable. It is not a regime which is very popular at home. We just saw the presidential elections in Iran after the death of the former President Ibrahim Raisi, and we saw the astonishingly low turnout in the elections. It's an indication, among many, that the Iranian people themselves do not welcome being ruled over by this brutal regime. So I think that the Iranian regime is full of points of vulnerability if we want to get into the business of challenging it. I don't think there has been that will in recent years, and I think that in the West, sadly, there still isn't that will. There still isn't a clear understanding, I think, of the nature and ambitions of Islamic Republic of Iran and of how that fits into a growing global axis against what used to be called the free world. And I can't really think of a better term for it, so that's the term we should still use. You know, which includes, of course, People's Republic of China, which the axis against it includes, of course, PRC, it includes Russia, and the Middle Eastern component of that is Iran with the ambitions which we are discussing. So I think urgently there needs to be the emergence of that necessary will that can then begin to produce the strategy which can start to roll Iran back, also in terms of challenging its proxies in the various parts of the region. And Israel can do that in the areas where it's directly affected. But Israel cannot be the only catalyst of a regional response to Iran. And also, as I said, within Iran itself, Iran has many points of vulnerability. In my view, it is indeed time to start to try to exploit them, because if we don't do that, then we are simply endlessly playing defense against an adversary who wants the game, so-called, to end in our destruction. That's not a sensible thing to do. If somebody's trying to destroy you, you shouldn't just endlessly be parrying blows. You should also be looking to hit back at a certain stage. And we are only just beginning, I think, to think in those terms. When I say we, in this case, I do include Israel. Israel, I think, had a profoundly short-sighted, complacent attitude towards Iranian ambitions and activities over the last 2 decades. For all that Israeli politicians talked endlessly about Iran, if we think about what was actually done, remarkably little was done. At the same time that they were talking about Iran, you know, they were leaving 692 soldiers deployed on the border of a Iran-associated Islamist enclave in Gaza on October 7th.
Funded by Qatar.
Also by Qatar, absolutely right. So, you know, there was a complacency, and that complacency, I think, needs urgently to end.
Mm-hmm. And I think we also have to remember, you know, before October the 7th, or maybe because of this, that the fact that the Israelis, the Saudis, seemed to be on the verge of a peace agreement, and this would have transformed the Middle East in all sorts of ways, which would have, I think, in some ways isolated Iran. And I think the fact that Hamas and Iran struck at this very moment I believe they took this into consideration, that the region could have been transformed.
Yeah.
And it's unthinkable in a way that you have Russia, China, Iran as this axis, and Iran pushing, as you said, it's this agenda in the region. And you know, where are these the axis of free countries, the alliance of free countries, Europe and the United States and other countries, supporting the Israelis, supporting the Abraham Accord countries to rid the region of the nuclear ambitions of this barbaric regime and the terrorism and the brutal proxies that it funds.
I agree, and I think that without the birth of that will in the West, and most importantly, you know, in the United States of America, it's difficult to see how the regional countries can coalesce into a coherent alliance which can challenge the Iranians. The Abraham Accords are great, of course. The Abraham Accords were brokered by the United States, and for those structures to continue, or other structures put in place, the Mideast Air Defense Alliance, the I2, U2 alliance, which involved obviously America, India, UAE, and Israel. Everything comes down in the end also to Western will. Obviously, CENTCOM and the ability of CENTCOM to concentrate energies in a way that was witnessed over the skies of Israel. On the night of April 13th, 14th this year, where an air defense de facto alliance revealed itself and unveiled itself. But all this comes down, not all of it, but a crucial component of it comes down to Western will. And my sense, I'm afraid, is that as I don't want to single out the United States for criticism. It's only that the United States is the most important player. That's why it's more important to focus on them than European powers, I think. And with regard to the United States approach, the current administration in its thinking is not a million miles away from the thinking of the Obama administration, in the belief that Iran can apparently, in their belief, be turned into a normal actor through incentives. And this is simply flagrantly and utterly mistaken, and it will produce mistaken policy again and again. And in the case of the Biden administration, what it has produced is years spent treading water whilst they vainly tried to induce Iran back into signing back onto the JCPOA, and at the same time failing to confront Iranian advances across the region, in Yemen, Iraq, in Syria, among the Palestinians as well, with the result that we now see of the only partial mobilization of the Iran-led militia axis, which has achieved something, by the way, unprecedented. We talked about the emptying out of Israel's northern border communities, but even maybe, certainly no less importantly than that, the closing down of the Gulf of Aden, Red Sea, a vital global maritime trade route to global shipping, which has been achieved by a relatively minor Iranian component of the militia axis, which is the Houthis or Ansar Allah movement, who've achieved that through very much low-tech means. And that's a powerful achievement, and it's testimony to the effectiveness of the Iranians' methods, I'd say, but it's also testimony to our weakness and lack of will. Because once again, our navies, the British Navy, the American Navy, are playing defense and not bringing results.
Yeah. And I think playing defense and showing weakness doesn't bode well, because it's going to empower and embolden the enemies of peace in the region.
No question about it. So, they are going to continue advancing. It's been a very good decade from their point of view. If they were to assess their strength now compared to their strength at, let's say, if we go back maybe a decade and a half, on the eve of the Arab Spring, 2010, 2011, from an Iranian point of view, to look at the region now compared to the region then, then they were already building up strength in Lebanon, in Iraq also, among the Palestinians. As a result of the events of the Arab Spring, they acquired Syria as well, which is not just about Syria, because Syria is the connecting link between Lebanon and Iraq. They now possess the entire contiguous territory between the Iraq-Iran border and the Mediterranean Sea, and the Iraq-Iran border and the borders with Israel. And they possess also, again, as a result of the Arab Spring and the falling of the Ali Abdullah Saleh regime in Yemen, they possess also a large chunk of Yemen, including the capital, and most importantly, including a large chunk of the coastline. That's very, very potent.
Staggering success.
Yeah, big success.
So to shift gears, this is the last question as we're running out of time. We can spend hours speaking with you. The attack on the Druze community in northern Israel, I read a quote from Wally Jumblat, who's the head of the Druze community in Lebanon.
Yes.
Lebanon is a very fractured, segregated society with Sunni, Shiite, Iranian proxies, other Sunni proxies. The Christians are under pressure. How do you think this attack in northern Israel affects the Druze community in Lebanon, which is significant? And how do you think this is playing out within Lebanese society? Is it having an impact in any way?
I've no doubt that in the privacy of their own homes, the Lebanese Druze are grinding their teeth with fury at Lebanese Hezbollah, the Shia Iranian-supported Islamist organization that carried out the attack. Having said that, you saw with Jumblat that publicly the Lebanese Druze are saying, well, this was probably Israel that carried this out, or at least we should not have any further escalation. This is because the Lebanese Druze, unfortunately, are right now not a beaten community, but they're a community, a severe underdog in terms of their strength to Lebanese Hezbollah. The Druze tried in the summer of 2008, in what's called the June events in Lebanon, to assert themselves against Hezbollah in partnership with what was then the March 14th movement of Saad Hariri, a largely Sunni movement. They were crushed by Hezbollah. Hezbollah went through Hariri's fighters, such as they were in West Beirut, like a knife through butter, and took over West Beirut in 48 hours. They didn't even send most of their own, they sent Amal fighters. That's how easy it was. They sent the second team, so to speak. So The Druze are a severely weakened community in Lebanon. For the Druze, it's always about keeping their lands. They'll say whatever they need to say, they'll align with whoever they need to align, as long as they can keep themselves on their lands. That's the way the Druze operate. So right now, Jumblat and the others are talking the way they're talking because they have no choice. If they want to stick around in Lebanon, right now they have to effectively, frankly, kowtow to Hezbollah, and that's what you're hearing in recent days.
So Jonathan Spire, thank you very much for joining us on the ISGAP Hour, Fighting Anti-Semitism. Jonathan's going to be speaking at the ISGAP Summer Institute now here in Oxford. You can see his lecture on our website, and parts of it will actually be on JBS in the near future. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Thanks.